Hey, what's up?
Yes, I'm finishing the semester. I'm teaching, so I'm finishing the semester and I'm a little tired. The students are tired.
Oh yeah, giving grades is the worst part of that
Well,
job,
we
huh?
have 2 weeks of classes and then finals and then grades.
So yeah, just before we started recording, I was asking you if the ratio, it's like 1.5 something is if it means, oh yeah, so you use right, it's not the scaling. I thought it might be the scaling. Yeah, it's between one dimension and two dimensions.
Okay, we need to clear this up. The fractal dimension has nothing to do with the scaling ratio. It's related indirectly. The fractal dimension is how dense a two-dimensional design packs. So if you just have lines, the fractal dimension is one because you have lines. If you start to get crinkly things, they start to fill up. So that's a fractal, cauliflowers, crinkly things. And the fractal dimension goes up because you're filling in more of the area with lines. See, the lines are crinkly and they're filling up more of the area. There appears to be an optimum for the human brain, and that's a mid-range fractal. So the fractal dimension is about 1.2, 1.3, 1.4. That's when things are happening, there is a lot of detail, it's organized. But then if you go beyond that, you're starting to really fill in the two-dimensional area, and it gets to be too much. Like you just have a few pieces of the paper showing through, and the rest is just filled in. That's too much. That's not pleasant. So the optimum is somewhere in between, and that's the fractal dimension that goes from one, which is just a single line, to two, which is the total area filled in with ink. So halfway in between, you have interesting structures. That's about the fractal dimension 1.4.
Google says approximately 1.585, but I
Well,
mean, yeah,
this
okay,
is
so in that range,
no, this is
close to
very
one and a half.
approximate. This is very approximate. Yeah.
The interesting thing is with the golden ratio and the Fibonacci sequence,
There's
it's like
something else. There's something
it's
else.
different, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's kind of close. And but with that one, it is the scaling, right? It's 1.618. Again, it's like
No,
close to 1
no,
point.
no, no. 1.618 is useless. The scaling ratio between levels of scale, namely different size components, you have beams, you have trim, you have wall panels. What's the ratio between those dimensions? It should not be not 1.618. It should be around 3. Which more exactly, it's
Oh,
the exponential, it's the logarithmic number e, which is 2.7, which is about 3. And this rule was known in medieval times. Okay, you have a window, you subdivide it into three panes. You have a wall, you subdivide it into three, two panes, the middle one is the window, approximately the same. So you subdivide something into three.
yeah, we talked about that in architecture school, but it was in a different context, kind of. It was a third. It was the rule of thirds. And then if you wanted to photograph something, the subject, it could be centered or it could be on a third. And a lot of times the third was more appealing.
It's the same rule because this rule, applies to many, many different things. So it also applies to composition in photographs. But in architecture school, I bet you did not apply it to the frame of a door.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, why
The
didn't we?
most beautiful doors in the world have a really huge wide frame. How big? About a third of the width of the door.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then beautiful doors just by themselves. Forget the frame, just the door. Subdivided into panels. How big are the panels? About a third of the width of the door. You never have in beautiful traditional architecture, you never have just a plain door. That's varnished wood. Or today we have just a metal door, like the horrible doors of the bathrooms of Louis Kahn Kimball Museum. Just metal slab, rectangular slab. It is avoidant. So you have a wooden door that is subdivided into panels, and those panels follow the rule of thirds. And then when you get the trim in between the panels, and you want to put some ornament in there if you want to, but just the trim, you divide by three, you get 1/3 times 1/3 is 1/9. So you go down to about 1/9.
And then I noticed at the end of your book, you have it mentions something about new urbanism. It says, well, okay, first you have, I'm talking about this particular book, the Algorithmic Sustainable Design.
Okay.
There was oh yeah, so there's some generative codes which sound interesting, urban genetics, and then form-based codes, which form-based codes, yeah, I guess they can fall short, but a lot of times that's what we have. And then you have a new urbanism and beyond. I don't know if this is. I hadn't noticed it before when I asked what you thought about new urbanism, but I noticed today actually that at the end of
Yeah,
your
yeah,
book.
no, no, no. I'm friends with the new urbanists. They have done wonderful things. Uh, the,
So
the,
Liam,
on- the only
oh yeah.
problem with the new urbanist movement in the United States is that everyone wants to say, well, not everyone, some architects want to say that they are new urbanists and they don't understand what new urbanism is about, and so they sell a client something that's not very good. So there is no quality control. The best of the new urbanists make really nice urban regions, either brownfield sites or greenfield sites, and you really love to be there, and the price shoots up because it's so desirable. That's the best. But there's no quality control, so you have some other developments driven by developers, and the money behind backing this. Find some architect who has some urban training, and then they say, we'll advertise this as a new urbanist development that really doesn't apply any new urbanist principles and is, blah to mediocre to not so nice.
Uh, have you do you know anything about the fractals and psychedelics? Okay, so I posted something on Instagram about fractals, and then someone said, "Oh, that reminds me of when I was on DMT." Someone put a comment saying that, and I looked into it, and apparently, yeah, a lot of people when they're on psychedelics, they see a lot of fractals. I don't know.
I
So
know
maybe
nothing.
if,
I know nothing about that, but I can conjecture. When you are in an altered mind state, you tend to see representations of your own neural structure, and the neural system is fractal. So I'm not
uh,
surprised that they're hallucinating and seeing fractals because that's the structure of the neural system.
the crazy thing is they see fractals and they see faces. A lot of people on DMT and when they take a heavy dose of acid or a heavy dose of mushrooms, they see like elves and fractals. And it like goes back to like what you talk about and what Anne talks about. Like they see fractals and they see faces.
Yeah, because we want to see faces to feel reassured. We want to connect with other people.
It's pretty crazy.
I have no information. I don't want to talk about the subject on which I have no information.
So I'm on episode 3 now of Chopping Out Shorts, and I saw the exact moment where you and Anne really got through to me.
Uh-huh.
I saw it in my face, like I saw my face change, and that's when I was like, I really need to consider this. You
Okay, now,
mentioned,
yeah, I'm
yeah,
interested. You are spending some time going through our videos to find shorts, which is nice. But are people picking up the shorts? Are people viewing the shorts?
yeah, yeah. The shorts do better than the long format. They've been so yeah, the one. Oh, and then people are commenting on TikTok and Instagram and stuff. And yeah, it's a mixed bag. It's a mixed bag. People agreeing and people disagreeing. Someone on TikTok wrote, uh, it only works with line drawings because I was comparing the modern architecture with the traditional that had ornament and fractal qualities. But I put up a bunch of line drawings, and then someone said it only works with line drawings. You need to show the modernism and the beautiful reflections of the sky and the glass, and see how it actually doesn't hold up in photographs.
I think it's a waste of time, but don't worry about it. What is important is that people who would not otherwise listen to these concepts, are exposed to them. They may like them, they may not like them. And some people, they look at a video, they look at something that you present or, we present, and they don't like it because it goes against what they learned in architecture school. And then, they think about it subconsciously. And then after 2, 3 weeks, they say, maybe there's something there.
Yeah, it's
So
true.
they may not like it instantly, but it eventually sinks in, and then they can take a second look at it.
And I noticed the thing is when you put out content online, when it does start to gain tractions, negative comment is just a part of it. Like I
Yes.
noticed back in 2022, I was posting 3 TikToks a day when TikTok was just really, really popping. And I noticed there was a point where I got traction. And then at that point, I started getting a lot of negative comments. And I would just ignore them because I realized anyone who gets big on social media at any time, negative comments is just a part of it. And
Yeah.
they just have to deal with it, embrace it, or ignore it. Um, so
Look,
yeah, the moment,
your energy should be spent in creating content to educate people who wish to learn these concepts, because these concepts, as we keep saying over and over again, they're not taught in architecture school. So these videos are available. Anyone has free access to them. If they don't like it, doesn't matter. But there are some people who are going to be turned on to say, wow, this is really interesting. And I wish I had learned this in architecture school. Well, you're learning it here, and you can follow. Anyone who's seriously interested can follow all these papers and books that we have written. And many other people have produced open source information, because I will mention this again for our audience of today's video. We publish everything free. Okay, so Anne or Neil writes a book. There's the publisher sells it. You have to buy it. But it's not a trade secret. You can go to the library, find the book, and read the information. I publish articles, and Anne Sussman publishes articles, and I publish article with Neil. Open access. You click on the web. These are professional journals. They go through the reviewing process. You read all the article. So that's open access information. Contrast this with the star architect who says, I hold the secrets to the design universe in my head because I'm a great genius. So
yeah,
if you're a student, you cannot find out how this person creates the designs for the buildings. Suppose you really like this famous star architect and you want to find out how he or she creates these designs. They're not going to tell you. They say, this is the secret. I'm a great genius. I'm close to God. So I have that in my head and I'm not going to tell you. These are trade secrets.
yeah, that is true. And that's why a lot of people end up wanting to intern for a lot of big name firms because that's the way you really learn how they do it. You go work at the office.
Yeah, 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 yes. So what happens? They spend 2 years working for close to nothing, and they're just sitting on the computer for 20 hours a day, doing the most boring possible work. It's slave labor.
But you do get to see some insights on how some of the most successful architects practice and
Uh,
operate.
I claim that that's negative information. What you learn in a star architect office, if you get close to the center of power, is how to handle power and abuse power, how to win commissions by lying and coming up with good publicity statements. There's nothing truthful there. The closer you get to power, the more corrupted you get, and the more you turn into somebody who lies and manipulates and will do anything to get a commission, because that's what the star architects do. So it's a very dangerous kind of thing, and it corrupts the young people who get close to the power, because it's all about power. It's not about the product. The product is deficient.
Yeah, when you mentioned the intermediate scales and then the really zoomed in scale of detail on traditional architecture, I started to see how a lot of contemporary architecture doesn't have it. It does a lot of times it does have a nicely proportioned building, but then after that it's bland because it's like you want to show off the proportions in the silhouette. So it's like you make this imposing big thing without the intermediate scale and without the zoomed in detail scale.
But Ara, you have seen Anne's work.
Yeah.
Anne takes scans of these buildings, and the eye refuses to look at the inside because there is no inside, it's just blank. So you have this huge building that nobody wants to look at. It's a failure as far as creating an information field that you experience in an urban environment. You know, you want to be able to examine all sorts of interesting informational details in the urban environment. And here there's nothing.
Yeah, it's true. Like if I bet if you did the eye tracking study with the Remcool House building and a traditional building, most people's eyes will definitely track the traditional building. But it's like once you go through architecture school, the whole thing shifts. And it's like, oh, there's a subtle shift in floor plates. Oh, I want to see what's going on there with, but it's like it just changes the way you look at the building, the architecture school process.
Well, architecture school does a lot of damage. But hopefully we have our series of videos here that some students can try to undo the damage.
And might be really onto something with the World War II thing with it because like what modernism and World War II, even though it seems like modernism kind of started before World War II started. Because if World War II started in 1939, like a
No, no,
decade
no.
before,
This is not World War II. It's World War One.
oh, World War
Anne
One.
is saying World War One because World War One was more devastating for ordinary people in World War II because you had these millions of people in the trenches and they were in the mud, stuck in the mud, being bombed, and a significant percentage of them came out with PTSD. So it's World War One that started it.
That is exactly what happened. Yeah, World War One,
Yeah.
1914 to 1918.
Yeah,
And then you have modernism right then.
exactly. The Bauhaus, Walter Gropius was complete PTSD with a shrunken brain. Nobody did a MRI scan, but the guy was just classic symptoms of PTSD because he was buried in the bunker. He was buried in a bunker for more than 24 hours. I think 48 hours. The thing collapsed after a bombing and he was stuck there. And then they pulled him out. The guy had PTSD.
I didn't even know that happened to him.
Yeah, yeah.
Wait, so he fought in the war?
Of course, he was in the front trenches. Walter Gropius.
Mies van der Rohe didn't, right? Or did he
No,
help? No,
Miss van der Rohe was in Yugoslavia with the German army building bridges. So I don't know if if he was exposed to heavy shelling or anything like that. But he was in the army, so we don't know exactly what happened.
oh, he was?
He was
Wait,
in the army, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Mies
yeah.
van der
But
Rohe was too?
yeah, yeah, Miss van der Rohe was in
Oh,
the army, and he was in sort of engineers battalion to build bridges for the troops.
I see.
And I think Anne looked into that and couldn't determine whether he was in active bombing or combat, but he was certainly in the army.
Mies van der Rohe's buildings don't look as much PTSD-ish as Walter Gropius is. Like Mies van der Rohe looks like he actually has a serious interest in creating beauty because he did have those ornamented columns with those
He did not have
from
ornamented columns. He had silly attached columns that meant nothing.
yeah, that was
Stuck,
the
stuck
interesting
on,
thing.
stuck on I-beams on
Yeah,
his
when I
building.
realized that, that was kind of very trippy because the whole thing about, minimalism, it's kind of defeated by when you actually do something decorative and make it look like it's minimalist on the exterior, but it's not actually how the
It's it's
building
it's
works.
it's 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 a basic dishonest approach to architecture. Now, Miss van der Rohe had symptoms of PTSD, which you could have if you're on the autism spectrum. And if you read student accounts, okay, Miss was in Chicago. Now, the most important professor in the architecture school in Chicago, the Illinois Institute of Technology, and he would sit in the classroom, and the students would come in. and he wouldn't open his mouth. He would smoke a cigar. The students
Oh
were
yeah.
terrified of speaking. He would smoke a second cigar. The bell would ring. Everyone would get up and leave. I mean, the guy was a lunatic. He was getting paid to be a professor, and he was just sitting in his chair to smoke a cigar. These are uh, symptoms of serious psychological problems.
The interesting is since then, architecture has become more ornamented and more kind of break things down to the scale. Like I don't know if you've seen Thomas Heatherwick's work.
Thomas
The,
Heatherwick has had a conversion, a philosophical religious conversion.
oh really? I didn't know about that.
Yes, yes. So since building his initial stuff, which was weird, interesting, but not really beautiful, he has now founded the Humanize Institute in London, and his firm, which has some nice commissions. His firm is funding research on human scale beautiful architecture. So he holds these mini conferences, and Anne has been there, has given a talk.
Oh
Alexandros
wow.
Lavdas just went there about 3 weeks ago. So Heatherwick has seen the light that we need to produce beautiful architecture in cities, and he's putting his money where his heart is. So I'm very, very proud of Thomas Heatherwick for doing this.
This project, the floating island in New York City is really nice. It has those columns and it's like
Well,
they
his later projects, are becoming really, really nice because he himself realized what a gift it is to have beautiful buildings for the users to experience. He didn't do that in the beginning of his career, but now he's a famous architect, and he's adopted some nice positive ideas, and he's helping students and bringing together researchers. So he has his site Humanize campaign, or the Humanize movement.
Alexandros Lavdas is he also an architect?
No, Alexandros Lavdas is a PhD neuroscientist.
Oh really?
And he's part of our team. He's a real neuroscientist. So his research goes right into the neuroscience.
Yeah, I think I saw him on one of the CPI videos.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Interesting.
look. We have written several papers together. One of the papers, we had some jerk for a reviewer who wrote uh, who refused publication of our paper and wrote a reviews report. The authors don't understand what's going on. We recommend that you check all this and fix it up. Check it with a neuroscientist. So we answered, the co-author, Dr. Lavdas, is a PhD neuroscientist.
Well,
This
thankfully
stupid,
now
this yeah, stupid architect, you know, trying to block the publication. We got it published.
now with the internet we could put out all the content we want without anybody telling us you can't put this content and anybody can see it.
Well, look, we can put informal content, but to publish a scientific paper, we still have to go through the reviewing process. Sometimes you come across some very unpleasant people who want to block. They want to protect. They think they're protecting the emperor. They want to protect the emperor from threats. Like in the Soviet Union. If you said, Stalin's mustache looks ridiculous, they would turn you in, and you would
Oh my
you would go
goodness.
off to Siberia for 10 years.
Yeah, there's a joke. People always say that in Soviet Russia, TV watched you.
Yes, yes.
Make
Well,
sure
look,
you watch.
I have constant problems with papers. This paper now that I'm revising, facade psychology is hardwired. I'm applying AI, ChatGPT, to get phenomenal results. And the reviewers are giving me a hard time. They say, this is invalid. What do you mean it's invalid? The Nobel Prize for Chemistry was won by people who applied ChatGPT for the protein folding problem. And so this is Demis Hassabis, the one of the fathers of AI. So he explained AI today was able to solve the protein folding problem. It could have been solved by a group of human beings if they had taken 100 million years. So AI did this work in a few weeks. And he shared the Nobel Prize in chemistry for this. This guy's not a chemist. This guy developed AI for computer games and then ported the computer games AI to do the program that won the Go championship. The world championship for Go was won by Demis Hassabis, his program. You know that. That was a revolution. I think
Yeah, you mentioned it. You
2014.
mentioned it. Yeah. I was kind of late to the game. Just a couple weeks ago, I started using ChatGPT, but it's really, really an amazing tool because it thinks with you. And it's like you input things and it gives you 10 different things you never thought of. And you're
Right.
like, wow, it might have taken me years to come up with this, but and you input what you want to it to explore, and then it gives you specifics. And then you could train it. Like it was giving me some images and it gave me it said site plans and then it gave me elevations. And then I
Uh-huh.
said, no, the label is wrong. Site plans are top view. And then it said,
Yeah, yeah.
oh yeah, you're correct. The true site plan is from top view. Here's a new image. And then it's so it's really, I mean, sometimes it gets things wrong, but you could just tell it what it got wrong and it'll fix it.
Right. Okay. Let me say two things. ChatGPT has created a revolution in the healthcare, a revolution in healthcare. Architects know nothing about this. ChatGPT is used for diagnosis. It's used for teaching. It's used for gathering information. A revolution. Architects totally blank out on this. They're stuck in a little silo. That's the first thing. So, I'm using ChatGPT for architecture. The second thing is that it makes mistakes. But every 2 weeks, there's a new version that's better. It's progressing like it's accelerating. You can't keep up with it. I try to keep up with it. But the power it had a year ago, now it's nothing compared to what it has today. And it's constantly self-repairing and self-fixing. And it's continuing to get better and better and better. So you found it made a mistake. It's learning. In 2 years, it will never make that mistake. In 2 years, it'll be much, much more accurate.
And it can create a lot of images too. Well,
Yeah.
Midjourney was known for creating images, but
Yeah.
ChatGPT was known for texting, but now ChatGPT is creating really fantastic images also.
Well, all of this is a fantastic toolkit for human scale architecture, but the architectural establishment is missing it because they want to hang on to the power, the political power that they have, and they want to continue making these boxes, inhuman boxes. They will do anything to keep making the same boxes. And if they don't make boxes, they make something weird, and strange that's still inhuman, creates anxiety. So they're insisting, I don't like it, but it's the reaction of a power system, a corrupt power system that is holding on to power, doing anything it can to hold on to power. That's what power systems do. Until the Soviet Union collapsed, it was putting people in jail, executing them. It was trying to hold on to power. So the architectural establishment is desperate in trying to hold on to power, and they want to use AI to hold on to power. But that's when you see the results, they're ridiculous.
But when I see all the practicing architects I know, it's not like they're trying to hold on to power. It's like they have clients, they're representing their clients have certain things they want, and the architect is just in the middle between the client and the authority having jurisdiction, trying to get approvals for them. Or like, oh, this property, you have 8 units by right, they want to do 8 units. I'm gonna get this approved for them, and the city has pushback, and then I'm gonna try to push it through. And it's like they're caught in the middle of these different forces of the real estate developer, the financier, and the authority having jurisdiction, the zoning and planning department, the building and safety department. The architect is just in the middle of all these things. And I think maybe it does really come back to it's just the remnants of war because I mean I don't see any other reason people would want to hold on to power and push the same boxes over and over again. But it's like, and then I remember you mentioned when I saw when I was shopping up the shore that the war was a long time ago and you thought that maybe that's not the thing. And then Anne said, well, the people who are being trained today, they're being trained by people who are being trained by people who were in the war. So it's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
still, even though I didn't know it at all, but I'm starting to realize that maybe that like that was the whole thing was like, okay, take the ornament away, take all every human scale aspect away, and this is what we're doing now.
Yeah,
Ornament is a
look,
crime.
Ara, you missed the key point here. You say the architect is stuck between the client and the authority.
Yeah,
Who gets to decide on the size of the frame of a door? It's the
the
architect.
architect. Yeah, that's
Who gets
true.
to decide on the shape of a window, whether the window is subdivided into mountains, whether the window has a sill or not, whether the window has an external frame to keep the rain from running in from the
That's
joint?
true.
It's the architect. Who gets to decide on the ceiling height? The architect is given, a certain specification, but then they decide to drop the ceiling with some cheap tiles. Instead of having a nice size ceiling, they drop the whole ceiling so that you feel claustrophobic. Okay, these are design decisions that influence the user and the inhabitant of the space. The architects stick to the Bauhaus modernist, rather inhuman decisions. Those are choices.
That's true, but it also comes down to when you go to Home Depot down the street, which is where your contractor is gonna go. Like all the windows, they're not really subdivided at all. I mean, actually, they do have some that are subdivided. You could definitely,
Again, Ara, you're my friend. We've been talking for so long. I go to Home Depot when I need something for my house, whether it's a kitchen faucet, or something, a trim for the the edge, and I see 20 choices. They're all
that's
ugly except
true.
for one. So I can find one that's pretty nice. So, it's the nice ones are in the minority, but they're available. Yet the architects consistently choose the ugliest ones because it's ingrained in their mind to have this image of industrial purity, the Bauhaus industrial purity, but that's ugly. The human body reacts negatively to that. But the architects are stuck with that. And if you don't want to go to Home Depot, you go to more specialized carpentry. You don't have to have something custom made. There are more specialized outlets that you can get some very beautiful things, building materials.
Yeah,
So I
that's
don't buy
true.
your argument. I'm sorry. You gave me the argument. That's a standard argument, but I don't buy it.
No, you're right. You're right. And I noticed some authority having jurisdictions, they do have certain requirements where they have a design review board. Like Glendale, California, they have a very strict design review board. If something is over a certain square footage, you do have to have your windows subdivided, and you do have to have articulation on the exterior. You do have to have different kinds of materials. You do have to have scale that matches your context. Like they have a board that will manually review your design. And and a lot of times they have comments with people's projects, which is like it's too much of a box. You have to break it up. You have to have more articulation. So yeah, and it's like at first you would see it as a hindrance, but then now I see it as they're actually doing great work and making sure that the city is more beautiful. And Pasadena has a strong design review board too.
Well, okay. Look, I don't believe this is the best solution to have somebody looking over your shoulder. The best solution is to train the architect for themselves to spontaneously want a beautiful window, without somebody telling them, your window is ugly, change it. The
Yeah.
architect should have spontaneous, I want to create a beautiful window so my client enjoys it, so somebody outside looks at it and enjoys it from the outside. That doesn't happen.
Beauty needs to become part of the conversation. That's the thing. Beauty is just not part of the conversation
Well,
at all.
beauty is kept out of architecture schools because it is threatening.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you hit the nail on the head one time. You were like, it's like how closely does your building resemble a famous architect's building? And that's like how your building is judged by it being good. Oh
But that's,
man.
if the famous architect's building is ugly, then your building will be ugly. So what is architecture school doing to our young uh, potential architects? They're teaching them the wrong ideals, the wrong models to follow. They present a horrible, ugly building, and they said, this is by famous architects. So for you to become famous, you have to do something like this. You copy it. So, the young person looks at this, and what do they see? They feel anxiety. So they decide, in order for me to become famous, I have to create a building that causes anxiety. And they do that. And then the idiots who are their architecture professors say, when they have the crits at the end of the semester, say, oh, wonderful building. No, it's an anxiety-inducing building. And you push the student to create anxiety-inducing buildings because they want to succeed. And they have figured out, because they're not stupid, they have figured out that the way to succeed is to produce anxiety-inducing buildings.
Yeah, and
This is a horrible thing.
you start to like buildings that might otherwise be anxiety inducing. There's a building that I really love but I'm starting to rethink it. I don't know. It's the Glendale's building and safety building. The whole thing is elevated off the ground. Like you look at it visually, it only touches the ground at 4 points, and the whole building is off the ground. And it's like
Yeah.
how is this? But I was fascinated by it. Every time I drive by it or go to the building to submit plans, I'd be like, man, this is crazy. This whole building is just lifted up in the air. It's magnificent. But
Look,
then now I'm like, man.
I don't know it, so I cannot judge it, but it sounds like it's anxiety inducing.
And there are some, well, there are a lot of interesting buildings in that area.
It's okay. What are the ethical implications of a young person going to architecture school and they have their mind warped to actually like producing designs that create anxiety, and they think this is a good thing to do? This is brainwashing of the worst possible. You're damaging this person's mind so that they will go through the rest of their lives creating anxiety-inducing designs in buildings. You have done something terrible to them.
Yeah. Can I sh share or no? Or should we not? I think it might be worthwhile to look at these. It says I can't screen share.
Okay, I just clicked it, and you should be
Oh,
able to share.
so it's this building.
It's an ugly modernist building that creates anxiety because it's sitting off the ground, and the facades are monotonous and anxiety-inducing. In fact, the facades are headache-inducing. Those are studies performed by Arnold Wilkins, Professor Arnold Wilkins of the UK. He has published several articles how monotonous repeating facades generate headaches. So, did the architects of this building not read those articles? Of course not. They don't care. They drew something on a computer screen and it was approved and they built it.
It does have some nice outdoor space, the outdoor landscape.
Oh, don't
This,
tell me about the outdoor space. You can have a beautiful building with the
yeah, it's
outdoor
true.
space that has nothing to do with the building.
This is another government building. This one, it's actually working with gravity visually, and it has ornament. But I mean, the scale is a bit massive, but it
Look,
has
it's,
some
it's better
interest.
than the other one, but those horizontal windows, those are
Yeah,
Corbusian windows. Those are ugly. They create
yeah, it's
anxiety.
true. The massing does look like a Corbusier building, even though the detail is very different and more detailed.
Look, I just told you 15 minutes ago, we brainwash our students in architecture school to say, if you want to be a success, you copy buildings by famous architects.
Yeah.
So they copy Corbusier, and if you copy Le Corbusier, you're going to get an ugly building. That's it. If you tell them copy Louis Sullivan, they will
Oh
learn something.
man.
When I first met you, you just heard vaguely of Louis Sullivan. Then
Yeah.
you looked at his building, you said, "Wow, this guy's a fantastic architect." He wasn't taught in architecture school. He's the greatest American architect after Thomas Jefferson. He taught Frank Lloyd Wright all that Frank Lloyd Wright knew. Sullivan hired Frank Lloyd Wright in his office.
Sullivan. Oh, I see. Um, Thomas Jefferson, I think he only designed like one or two buildings, right?
Yeah, but they're the most beautiful buildings in the United States. Well, he designed the campus of the University of Virginia, and he designed some of the buildings in the University of Virginia. He designed his own house, Monticello.
And he had some interesting city plans too.
Yeah,
Uh,
this is a nice building.
yeah, this is a nice building. It's a
So
post
is it
office.
old or new? Now, I don't tell me, but it's probably old. However, many of my friends could design such a beautiful building today. Yet you hear in the architectural press, something like this you cannot build today. Of course you can. Near can do something like this, beautiful. Um, Michael Imber can do something like this. Any
Yeah.
one of 50 contemporary traditional architects can build something so beautiful today, using the latest thermal insulation and air conditioning, and you have a beautiful building.
Yeah, and arguably it would be more efficient than a modernist building.
Of course, of course. Okay, so let's wrap this up.
Sure. Oh
Oh, you
yeah.
want to show? Okay, so
Yeah, I
let's
just
show
want to
some
look at.
Jefferson. Yeah, let's finish with Jefferson.
Oh, I see. It looks very inspired by the Parthenon and the Pantheon. And
Ara, don't tell me that.
no?
Inspired by. No, no. Jefferson learned the proper proportions, the proper dimensions, and to create a totally original building. This is a completely
Yeah,
original building.
yeah, it
It
is.
is inspired by the humanity and the scaling of those buildings that you mentioned. It's not a copy.
No, definitely not a copy. But also I could see similarities to Palladio's Villa Rotunda, but also very face-like. I could see the face-like qualities that Anne
Yeah,
talks about too.
that's what attracts you, the abstract face-like. So, Anne would say this is a face. It's why it's so attractive.
And ever since
Jefferson,
you pointed that out, I've
yeah,
been seeing
Jefferson
faces with
knew
them.
that intuitively.
Yeah, man.
Okay, so let's end today,
Cool.
and we'll see what's coming up next week. Okay,
Okay,
Ara,
sounds
you
great.
keep well.
You too. Take care. Peace.